Hello and welcome to the Codex Moments podcast. It's been a little while since we've done one of these. This is nice. I like it.
We say that because it's only two of us. It's been a very long while since it was just the two of us, I think.
I know. It's kind of weird, but yeah, it's all right.
It is. Ali's on holiday. He decided to go and sun himself and drink himself into a stupor for a couple of weeks. And we decided after the fact that, what did we hit? Nearly 20 million listens last week on our podcast, making us arguably the most popular podcast in the world.
Yeah, I mean,
we better put out some more content.
I was impressed with that. Apparently, you think it was an error.
I wish it wasn't. I wish it was true.
Are you suggesting
down a little bit this week?
Are you suggesting those 20 million listens in 1 week wasn't real?
No, sadly not.
It's. I suspect it's probably the same people commenting on the Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts YouTube video that's been posted this week.
It might be. We definitely didn't pay for those listens, though.
No. So, sorry. Anyway, right. I digress. I'm Andy Brown, at Clinton Andy on Twitter, and with me today is Dr. Matthew Holt.
Hello. So yeah, we're here to talk all things, and we mean all things. This could get quite spoilery, but we're here to talk about Control, Remedy's latest game.
Yeah, we are.
It came out, it was about 5 weeks ago now, I think.
Yeah, well, it was long enough for me to have finished it, so yeah, arguably.
So it came out 3 years ago, and we found... No, it's been out about 5 weeks, and that's actually testament to the type of game it is and how compelling it is that you have actually finished it.
Yeah.
Without taking the too much, that's quite a rarity for you
and I'm
at the moment.
And I'm still playing it.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, hitting the end game content and then going on to the next part. So we thought, Ali's on holiday. He hasn't played it yet. He's not too bothered. He doesn't listen to the podcast when he's not on it. So let's go for it. Let's talk all about Control.
Oh, where should we start?
Start at the beginning.
Okay. So
I'm just testing your memory to see if you remember how it started. Because it's actually quite unassuming, isn't it? The initial premise and concept, it's just wander into an office building.
It's really nice, and it doesn't really read you in, does it? You're just kind of there, and everything you pick up is through the game. And so much of what you pick up of the story is down to you to pick up and read and take out. If you're the kind of person who doesn't like scouring through the in-game documents and listening to the audio logs that you discover and watching videos, it's probably not for you. But if you are, and I am, it's lovely, and it's done really nicely because it doesn't spoon feed it to you. It's just, it feels like a real office, like a real place you could go to and work in, and you discover stuff as you go through, and you backtrack through areas when your access gets improved. So all of the documents and all the things you find, there's no logical order to it. And I don't know if you've ever played a game where you get the impression that every time you pick up a document, it's just giving you like the next page of the story, no matter where you find said document. This one, no. You go to places, you find various different things, and both Matt and I had discussions about various documents that one or the other of us hadn't found. And we were like, oh, I didn't know. No, that's interesting. Yeah, wow, that fills in that blank. And everything's so heavily redacted as well.
That's probably the fun thing about it, isn't it? Because you're in the Federal Bureau of Control.
Yeah. It's
meant to be a government organisation. And because of that, they cannot reveal most of what they do. So the first few documents I think you pick up, you're barely really reading everything. It's just
haven't got
bars
a clue
everywhere.
Yeah. You fill in so much of the story in your head, and then you kind of piece various bits of it together like a puzzle as you go through and pick up the documents. Not literally like a puzzle as in, a metagame, as in just in your head. This is a cerebral game. If you want to understand the story, you've got to actually think about it. And you really do have to read all the documents and everything. But that said,
yes,
they're really fun. They're really good fun. It's just such great dynamic storytelling. And this feels like a really odd tangent to have gone off on in the first 5 minutes of talking about the game.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
But just to get it out there, this is a game you actually really have to think about, and even if you're given all the pieces, you probably still, 20% of it you might have to do on your own.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's a lot of it, and like you said, because it's so fun, you don't actually mind, and you find yourself. I don't know how you did it. I don't know if you eagerly read everything as soon as you picked it up. I tended to wait until an appropriate point, usually at the point where I was going to stick the machine into rest mode and go to bed. But I would usually go, I'm just going to read everything I've picked up before I do that, though. And you'd spend maybe 20 or 30 minutes going through everything because there is a lot. There are hundreds of collectibles.
Yeah.
But you just keep going through it. And because I wasn't doing them at the time of picking them up, I was discovering things about something I'd maybe done 2 hours before and not really thought about, or instances like we had the conversation about the Post-it note room.
Oh, yeah.
And so I only found the document for that about, in real world time, about 3 or 4 days after I discovered the room. And that suddenly explained why I've walked into this level 2 room that is floor to ceiling, walls, everything in Post-it notes. And you're reading it going, yeah, I like that touch.
Yeah,
that's
sense.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It throws that much extra detail at you from the documents, and I love the videos. They remind me of Lost and the Dharma Initiative.
Well, it's kind of it obviously takes some cues from Quantum Break, and Remedy are good at this. They're good at this kind of world building. You look at Alan Wake and Quantum Break, and they do this, but with Quantum Break. And it's been years since I played Alan Wake, so I can't really remember it that well. But certainly with Quantum Break, it was very linear. And you pick up the documents, and it just felt like, okay, I'm filling it in. But by the end of the game, you're just like, I just want to get through this now, and I'm not really paying much attention to these. With this, because there's such a kind of key part to it, and because the game is not linear by any stretch of the imagination, it just makes it more interesting. It's probably the only game in recent years when I have meticulously read every single thing I've picked up when I've picked it up. That became a key part of the gameplay for me, and I actually looked forward to finding more documents and stuff like that. So yeah, this is quite a nerdy game in that respect.
It is, and there's an awful lot that's done through the environment as well. I mean, we started with the main character walking into the lobby and then shot off somewhere completely different about the tangent. But actually, that first moment that she walks in, and in effect, she's just trying to find. There's nobody at reception, is there? So she's just off up the stairs. Lifts are locked down. There doesn't seem to be anything going on, and she's gone for a job interview, hasn't she? As the janitor, I think it is.
It's the janitor's assistant, yeah.
She discovers the janitor vacuuming one of the floors or buffing one of the floors. I think she does, doesn't she, at that point? Yeah. And then carries on walking back to the beginning, back to the lobby, and everything's... Well, not everything. There are a couple of subtle changes, including a lift appearing from nowhere.
Well, no, what it was for me, it was you meet the janitor, and then you carry on walking forwards in the direction you were heading originally, and then you come back to where you were through the door you went through. And there's just that moment of, hold on, have I backtracked here? And I actually turned around and went all the way back and thought, no, I have literally just come through the same door. How is that possible? And you start to realise at that point that this building's a bit weird.
Yeah, and that's in the first 3 minutes, pretty much. And it does set up that is what you're going to see for the entire game, and that arguably the star of the game is not the main character, it's the building, because it just does some really weird but funky things, and there's some brilliant transitional stuff that they use and some great concepts that just leave you wrong-footed most of the time.
Yeah, it's lovely, and I think it's a bold opening gambit of a game when within literally 5 minutes of walking into a building that you essentially have no idea about, somewhat explained away by the kind of in-game concept that this is, the building hides its existence from the rest of the world, and thus the Federal Bureau of Control is pretty much no one's ever heard of it. You walk in and within 5 minutes, you're the director of the Federal Bureau of Control, and it doesn't even feel massively contrived. You're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, right.
It doesn't.
Sure.
And it's the acceptance of everybody that you meet that you are the director as well. Nobody questions it.
Okay. And that feels weird for about 30 minutes. And you're like, okay, I'm getting into this now. You're made the director of the FPC because, the previous director is indisposed. You walk out of the office and there's been his picture on the walls.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And you walk out of the office and then suddenly it's your picture hanging on the wall. And you're like, oh my God, this is freaky.
It is. It's those little things. And like I say, you don't get challenged about it. Nobody queries it because everybody you're encountering has worked there for a while and knows about the Bureau of Control or the oldest house and knows that the directors are selected, which is the process you have gone through right at the beginning. And so we're, 10 minutes in now?
Yeah.
It's completely confused. No idea what's happening, except that maybe we just have to go and find our brother and rescue him and get out. And it just goes from there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it all gets a bit weird.
You said it's a far from linear game. I think it is quite a linear game. It is very much, you need to go here and do this. You tend to have full access to everywhere.
Certainly.
But you can only execute the story in a particular order.
Certainly in the first couple of hours, that's the case. But as you get in, you do open up more areas and you can do more things in parallel.
You get a few side quests that you can head away on and those bits and pieces. But it does sort of drive you in a particular way a lot of the time, I found. Although it doesn't tell you exactly where to go, does it?
No, and I think that's one of the really nice touches to it, or lack of touches. There's no HUD, there's no checkpointing or way markers essentially in that respect that we've all got so used to. You're given a map, which quite frankly isn't a huge amount of help.
No, it can be more confusing because it's just a 2D map for a 3D space.
And also, for some reason, remarkably slow to load in when you try and pop it over. I don't know if you experienced that on the PS4 Pro. You'd press the map button and like the general outline of the map would appear, and about 6 or 7 seconds later, the map would suddenly pop in. You'd be like, what's causing the issue? Yeah.
It will be tied if you attempted to load the map after you press the pause button to unpause it. I think that's when it kicks the autosave in, and that was a grind fest. It's been patched a couple of times since I last played it, but I don't think it's completely eliminated those weird stutters and performance hiccups, which is every time strange, particularly on the map.
Every time you unpause, you do get like a slowdown, don't you?
Yeah, it is strange. Now, it's widely reported to slow down during the combat on virtually every platform, and there is. And I sort of understand why, because there's a lot in play. There's a lot of particle effects going on in this. There's a lot of objects. There's all sorts happening, which, I mean, I don't know. Some of the most fun moments is when you do get into a fight and accidentally trigger an explosion, and suddenly you've got chairs and desks and papers flying all over the place, and it's just chaos. But it's really lovely chaos.
Looks good, and apparently the Xbox One X is if you have a choice, that's the platform to go for, with the Pro having a few more performance issues but still quite playable, and then the kind of standard PS4 and the Xbox One S struggling a little with it. I think is it's probably been patched out now and it's better, but there's a really nice Digital Foundry piece on.
Yeah, that was on the launch version, wasn't it?
Yeah, the differences between the platforms, and also just a little bit about the technical aspects of how the game presents itself and the resolution and stuff. So I would advise you to go and look at that, because it would be able to give you a lot more information than I would.
It is lovely looking. It's brilliantly detailed. For what is a boring environment, I don't think there's any way around it, is it? Apart from the weird and funky stuff that the building does, because it shifts its shape. It's been taken over by the hiss, which has corrupted elements of it and almost forced it and stopped it from shaping itself correctly. But it does just trip off into different dimensions at points, doesn't it?
Very much so. But, at its at its core, it's 70s brutalism at its best. And it's really nice to play a game in that kind of because I haven't played a game in that kind of environment before. It's actually really refreshing. It's not generic military complex, and
if you like grey, it's a lovely colour palette.
Yeah, it's got that. It has got that kind of slightly stonewashed consistency. It's good. I'm really enjoying the game. I would say that in terms of the it's got some really interesting characters in, and I got the feeling like I didn't know if I could trust Pope, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
She just seemed a bit too enthusiastic about things.
Yes. But then they all kind of... I think it's because she's one of the first ones you meet when you're not settled with the character or the game. And I think we're so ingrained that she's got to be up to no good because she's too helpful.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing. Yeah.
And actually, by the time you're getting towards the end of the game, you have realised, yes, there's that total acceptance. And it never explicitly says it, and I don't know if it's in there anywhere, but the way that the building works, I almost think that has something to do with people accepting you. Or the astral plane does anyway, the board in the astral plane, the mysterious...
The upside-down pyramid.
Yeah. They are... Well, you don't obviously ever see them, you just hear them. Or an interpretation of them, even. It's high sci-fi concept, isn't it? That realm. Yeah,
it's a very stylish game. I like the fact that because the one thing I found about Quantum Break was it was kind of generic. It was an all right third-person cover shooter with some interesting time mechanics thrown in, but it never. It was kind of fun, but it never really hit a maximum. It never really kind of ticked all the boxes for me. But this feels better. The powers, the combination of the way the weapons work and the powers is really nice because you can't just spam one of them. The way they've kind of balanced them.
Yeah, I like the way there's no ammo. It's all a recharge. In effect, and so you have a number of shots and you've got to meter it out and measure it that way, but then you're not having to hunt for ammo either. And yes, the powers do really complement it, and you find yourself using them an awful lot. You're not just heavily reliant on your pistol, although that is your main way of taking enemies out. The combat itself as a third-person combat game, it works. It's not the best in the world. But I think that's because you are supposed to train yourself to use the powers rather than just run around gunning people. You are supposed to think more tactically about encounters. That doesn't mean that at times it feels a little bit unfair with some of the enemy types who are a little too accurate or able to track you in ways that you can't track them. But you sort of get used to it. You have a couple of moments of frustration. But it never takes too long to get back into it. Checkpointing's pretty good. As long as you've activated your checkpoint.
Oh, which is the control points that you can kind of free up and
yes.
And then they act as your basically a respawn point, aren't they?
Yeah, and a fast travel and upgrade station, and they're kind of multifunction, aren't they, really? And they're dotted all over the place. So you're never too far from accessing anything like that and enjoying it to its extent. But there are a couple of encounters where you just like, I've had enough. In fairness, the worst encounters, the most difficult one I found, or two in general, side missions. The side missions have been harder than the main game. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, you've got to go and kind of stop these objects of power, haven't you, that have gone rogue, that are just basically going crazy and hurting people or creating weird, just trying to kill you, essentially, throwing clocks at you. I never thought I would sit here and say, I really enjoyed that game where that monster threw a clock at me.
This is it. This is it has such bizarre scenarios, doesn't it? The idea that the mystical power of some description has infested an everyday object to do something strange And it's not all necessarily lethal either. Some of them are just weird. But the poor guy who's in the panopticon where they store all these objects, who's just been staring at a fridge,
which is essentially
his shift.
It's just like the the weeping angel of the fridge world.
It is
essentially,
and he's not. You're almost getting the feeling he's not even blinked for like 24 hours. He's just staring at the fridge, and by the time you finally unlock the door, you open it up and there's just a bloody smear.
It's nicely done. The fact that the guy's last words when you have to walk through a side room to get to him, and at which point he is out of your vision for all of a few seconds, and the last words you hear are, "Jesse, the fridge is doing something weird." It's something like that. It's brilliant. Yeah, really funny.
Oh, it's like the baby carriage, the Chinese lantern that you come across. There's a rubber duck somewhere.
Do you know? Never have I played a game where I've seen a rubber duck or an old-fashioned it's a jukebox and thought, I hope I get to have a boss fight with that later.
It was Gordon Freeman's crowbar. Yes. He's in one of the cells, isn't it? And they've got some really nice touches and things, and nods to other games. And
in fact, it looked like the same style of pram, that kind of classic silver cross thing. You know, you see in Ghostbusters and the Untouchables.
Yes, it is exactly that, isn't it? But they're dotted all over. So you've got the dangerous ones that are locked up, and then you get other ones that are just around that they're experimenting with. There's the luck room, isn't there?
Did you solve?
A room which are dedicated to lucky items.
Did you solve the puzzle?
No.
So you see, and this is what I love about this game,
because you can interact with all the lucky items.
Yeah. So if you go into the luck room, have a look on the board, and there's basically if you spend long enough looking at the whiteboard in the actual luck room with the roulette wheel. Did you go in with the roulette wheel?
Yes.
Right. Because again, and this is what the game does really well, okay, is it's got lots of side rooms that you don't need to go in. You can complete the game. There's at least 3 or 4 significant areas that I can think of, being the one down the pit that we were talking about the other day.
Yes.
The mirror.
Yes.
Oh God, what was the other one? The whole anchor thing with the clocks. You don't have to go back there. The fridge essentially is another one, you know.
Yeah.
There's whole areas which are either side quests or they're not even side quests that are they're just there, they're just off somewhere, and later on you go back and you think, did I go down there? And you go back and there's a whole new portion of the game to play that is no way connected to the story, but is actually like an interesting portion that you need to go and learn about or find out about. And the luck puzzle was a bit like that. So that was one area. You go in reasonably early in the game, and there's a high-level locked door. So you think, oh, well, I must be coming back there later. No, don't take it for granted. There's a whole slew of areas in this game that are locked off early on that you just don't need to go back to. They're just shits and giggles. Absolutely. And the luck room is one of those. It's got this, you can go back and there's a roulette table with like a camera over it. And on the whiteboard behind the roulette table, there's like a load of things that have been either ticked off or crossed off. And if you sit there, you can work out they're doing an experiment in luck.
Mm.
And if you go and follow the criteria, so some of them are saying, right, you know, use the magic cat, make sure the horseshoes are a particular way around. You can work out the combination from the whiteboard, and when you get it right, you unlock a special gold suit.
Oh,
yeah, by playing the roulette table. And it's something bizarre, like you've got to the horseshoes have got to be the right way around. The cat's got to be moving. The elephant shouldn't be that's it. The elephant shouldn't be being knocked by the Newton's cradle next to it, but the other Newton's cradle should be moving. And you've got to put the goldfish within a certain amount of distance of the roulette table, something like 2 or 3 feet. and then you've got to start it but not be stood on the red carpet when it goes. And if you do all those things, it will land on number 7 and you'll unlock this suit. And if you get it wrong, something will explode in the room, like a fire extinguisher will blow up, or the sprinklers will go off. So you know that you're on the right track. But yeah, really, really weird. That took me a long time of trial and error because I was like, there must be something to this. I want to get. Clearly, I've got to get number 7, and I keep getting number 8. So what am I doing wrong?
I went into the locked room, but like I said, because the high locked off door, I hadn't been back, because you probably visit that within the first third of the game.
Yeah,
and yeah, yeah, wow, because there's hidden rooms. There are hidden areas. I think I found 3 hidden rooms during my entire playthrough, and with a bit of exploration after.
Yeah, I only found the one, which is like the one in the middle of the the power plant, where you can climb right the way to the very top when you unlock your levitate skill.
Yes. That's
the only one I found.
There's one where there's it's almost like a giant turntable in the middle of the room to swap tracks round for a trolley system. And when you first enter that and end up on the trolley system, if you look up and behind you, there's a room with a glass window up there, like an observation room, that if you go up and smash the glass, you can get in. So there's all sorts hidden away, tons of stuff that I know I will have missed. And I think it was probably fairly late on in the game, but there's one of the areas you visit, and I forget which area it is, which is why I've not gone back to it. But you enter the room as if it's a normal one, and then the floor and everything just twists and looks as if it's heading off to infinity.
Is that like the archive or something?
It might be. I thought, I want to run down there. But I got distracted by an enemy in the main story, and I never did it. And I've never gone back to have a go, because I can't remember how I got there in the first place.
I did it, and can I tell you what happens?
You hit a dead end.
No, you run. If you go on one side, so you run on one side, of the room. So it's there's stuff in the middle of the room, so it's kind of divided. There's corridors on either side.
Yes.
And if you run up the corridor, the room goes all wonky and twirls around you, and you kind of stay the right way up, but everything kind of morphs around you, and then you suddenly realise you're running down the other side, and you come out the corridor on the other side.
Oh, nice.
Amazing. Yeah, really well done.
It's those kind of environmental shifts that I really liked. The one the first time you experience it, it's you'll be exploring the oldest house, and you'll come across a dead end, and you'll be able to see where you need to go to, but you can't get to it. It's empty, but there's just a light switch and a little notice board telling you that the light switch is there, and it's a conduit, isn't it? It's a conduit to the motel.
Yeah,
which is like an intermediary place for teleportation. It's really strange and really nicely done. And you pull the light switch once, and the lights go off. And you pull it again, and the lights come back on. And you pull it again, and everything goes off, and you're in somewhere completely different. But it's done in a split second of pulling that cord, and it's timed so brilliant. You just go, "What the happened there?"
Yeah. And then you keep doing that, and you go back to that place, and you get used to the fact that for some reason you need to pull the cord 3 times to make it work.
There's like a rule of 3s in one of the documents very early on, isn't there?
Well, I found it after I'd been in there a few times, and it was suddenly explained that it's basically an OCD thing.
Yeah.
And that's why it works. And you're like, oh, wow. That's awesome. That's really awesome. It's very clever, the way it ties in folklore and people's kind of obsessive compulsive nature and stuff like that, and explains a lot of the weird things in there through just human nature. Very interesting.
It is brilliant. The furnace, it might well be one of the first side missions that you find. The furnace that's possessed is the best word, and you have to feed it, which is brilliant.
I went in and I was expecting a boss fight, and it was nope, just feeding a furnace. Toxic waste. Okay.
The break room just round from the first janitor's office, when you have your first proper conversation with the weird as he's mad as a box of frogs janitor.
Oh, he's like is he Norwegian or from Finland?
No, he's Finnish. He's Finnish.
Finnish, yeah.
He's superb, because he quite clearly is an otherworldly entity. He's not a janitor. He knows the secrets. He knows what that place is. and he conveys a lot of it to you through the course of the game in just a very normal, natural way he speaks to you. So just down from his office, where you've spent your time talking to him, is a break room with the odd, weird, red flashing light, and you're told there's something a bit strange in there. And I don't know about you, I don't know how you actually discovered it. I was just in the room sort of walking around thinking, well, what are they on about? I don't get this. And all of a sudden, floor disappears beneath me, plunging downwards, and have to get to a rocking horse.
Yeah. Was it a rocking horse, or was it like a is it a fairground?
Oh, it's a fairground horse. Sorry, it's like a carousel.
It's same difference.
And you're just like, how have I ended up here? And then you fall back into the room, and you're like, what is going on? That playing with space and reality, anytime it throws you into the astral plane, that kind of stuff is just so well done. It's so disturbing, but cool at the same time.
Ashtray Maze.
We're getting into proper spoiler territory now. We haven't actually ruined the story. We've just spoiled some of the missions so far. But this one's probably the biggest one yet, isn't it? The Ashtray Maze, I sent you a message after I'd done that.
Yeah.
So there's a point in the game where you have to reach a certain area. And I'm only saying certain because I can't remember what area you have to reach. But the only way to get to it might be the archive. Is the archive on the other side of the Ashtray Maze?
No, it was dimensional research.
Right. That would make sense. So you head to the Ashtray Maze, and it's like a 60s hotel corridor.
Yeah, that is a very good description of it. Except as you walk in through what is called a fire break, which is essentially just a void with a walkway over nothing and huge, like massive black rock slab doors that open before you in a very, very imposing way, and it's all very grand and dramatic, and then you're in this 60s or 70s hotel corridor with like just an observation room next to you. You're like, this is weird. It's got weird again.
And you try to walk down it, and within like 2 turns of a corridor, you're back at the start.
Yeah, and no matter what happens, you're always back at the start.
Yeah, you can't get through, and you're just a bit stuck, aren't you? And then you discover the document that tells you about it.
It's part.
It's it's a message for the cleaners, isn't it? That you find, and you have to then go and find the janitor to get his help, because it turns out you actually need headphones and music to be able to traverse the maze. The janitor is where he's like on the foundations of the universe or something. It is so unbelievably abstract, that place.
He's on holiday in essentially what is the FBC's basement, which is also presumably the outer fringes of another dimension. I'm not entirely sure of the logistics of it, but he's on his hollybobs.
He's there, and you head down. He gives you his Walkman and his headphones, and you go back.
You go back to the Ashtray Maze, and you fight your way through it with essentially a thrashing metal soundtrack.
It is so out of character to the rest of the game,
and it's
because
amazing.
It's not your grey brick walls, it's not your red hiss all over the place as it is. You're not your floating bodies anywhere. It's just this 70s hotel corridor that keeps shifting space and level, and you move. You do not stop through that section, do you? You just keep going, and the music fits perfectly, pumps you all the way through, and you get out, and I probably sat there and went, that was cool, and I messaged you.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing that, Jesse Fayden goes, well, that was cool.
Yeah.
They captured the feeling within the character of what you're feeling, and at that point you're just going, yeah, they've nailed this game. Absolutely nailed it for me.
It's interesting because you often say, or a lot of games have a mute protagonist because, you know, it enables the player to truly have immersion and feel, you know, empathy with the character and stuff like that. This game is completely opposite. Jessie is actually, by the time you've got through, she's a reasonably well-rounded character. Yeah. You know a fair bit about her and what's gone on through the various documents and through the things that she said and through the kind of narrative construct where you start to realize that you are perhaps this other entity that lives within her. That was the feeling I got. But actually, it worked really well because, yeah, like you said, she's reacting to stuff in exactly the same way you are, which is this kind of incredulous, like, what the f***?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've had a podcast for a while with so many beeps in it. But generally, that's like 90% of this game. What the f*** is going on?
Yeah. It's really, actually, right, so here's the other thing, because we were saying earlier about the design and the start of it. There's a lot of games where you might have clipping issues or, various janky issues, and you think, oh, this is a bit poorly done. And this game, I had moments where I'd walk into a room and something would fly off a desk.
Yeah.
Or something weird would happen. In any other game, you'd think, oh, it's a clipping issue or it's some kind of collision detection issue. In this game, you think, what was that?
Yeah.
What? Oh my God.
And it'll have just been the room loading in when you've walked into it. But you are going, it unsettles you and unnerves you. It's the fact that you've got bodies 10, 15 feet in the air, floating, constantly whispering at you. Because that's what the hiss does. It takes over people. It's not always aggressive. And that's what's floating around. And it's just this rambling stream of consciousness, isn't it? And it's very, very unsettling.
Yeah.
So if it does glitch slightly and throw a window blind up or do something that any other game would look weird,
it just feels right.
It fits perfectly. It does.
Yeah, it really does. It just feels right.
It's so well done to disguise its own flaws. You mentioned it a few minutes back, but the entity that travels with Jesse. So we've not actually touched on that. And Jesse actually is, in theory, from the game, inhabited by an entity that she picked up at an Altered World event when she was a kid, when her brother was taken. And this entity's been travelling with her, and it never speaks. You occasionally get sort of flashes of a kaleidoscopic pattern which indicates it's communicating with Jesse.
Yeah.
But you don't actually ever hear it, but she has that conversation and she sounds out how she's feeling against it. And it kind of leads you to believe that the entity is the one with the powers and Jesse is, just helping it maybe get home. That's kind of the vibe that's going on while she's looking for her brother. That doesn't quite pan out. Do we want to go into major spoilers?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to call it a spoiler cast, so I think we should probably absolutely ruin it for anybody who's made it this far.
Yeah, so if you've not played it and really are not put off already, here we go. That entity, as far as the game is concerned, dies. It kind of just disappears, and Jesse's left alone for the first time in decades. 15 years?
Yeah.
20 years?
Yeah, it's like 20 years.
I don't know about you. It was actually, surprisingly, for a mute protagonist, really sad. We've got no connection to that entity at all. It was all Jesse's.
It was also a really interesting part of the game because you're kind of sent back, and it's the one part of the game I've thought that could have been done differently and been more interesting. So you go back to a point where essentially you have the game over screen and the credits. And then you very quickly realise that there's something not right about it. And it then dissolves back into a world where the FBC is kind of under his control, but Jesse's working there in just a menial kind of office job.
Yes.
Now, how long did you clean cups and make copies?
Not too long, if I'm honest. I think I did.
Yeah.
You kind of do the tasks, and then there's one pops up that you do that then kind of loads the next or triggers the next day kind of activity.
So that whole
must have been 4 or 5 days in game, but it wasn't long overall.
It's about 10-15 minutes, probably the whole section. Full stop.
Something like that. Yeah.
Now, I think that would have been really interesting if they'd have made it less clear that it was still the Hiss invasion. If I came into that section, I was genuinely thinking, oh my God, has this whole thing with me being the director been some kind of weird fever dream or something like that? If they genuinely made me start to question, was any of that actually real or happening? I think that could have been a lot more interesting. And also, if they'd not telegraphed the way out of it with the obvious, take this to the director task, and seen how long people could carry on doing perhaps a wider selection of menial tasks, thinking they were getting somewhere when actually you could do that on an infinite loop before you realise. I think that could have been really interesting.
Could have been quite funny as well.
Yeah, as it was quite clear this is something I need to work through. But I think given how much the game plays on psychology and everything else, actually, it would be really interesting to try and make people think, was that all fake and is this real? Yeah, I don't know.
That could have been. It could have been a really nice way of doing it, because that whole concept of it just being a normal job for people is always touched on all the way through. Every person you encounter, this isn't. I mean, Jessie's running around doing the tasks on her own, but there are people in this building, and lots that you encounter and talk to and have proper lives and jobs, and the documentation runs across that, and the banter that goes backwards and forwards in the office, as well as the standard reports, and then the wall of names of people who've died on the job when they've lost people because of not being able to contain these events. And it really does feel like a proper government organisation. And yes, that piece at the end, which almost has Jesse as a cog in the machine, could have been played very differently.
Speaking of speaking of almost endings, let's talk about the actual end of the game.
Yeah, so the actual end.
We're deep in spoiler territory now, so I think
it's a little bit anticlimactic, isn't it?
The relationship between Jessie and her brother is played on through the whole game, and it's her driving force. It's what pushes the game along. And there's a really interesting bit where you don't rescue him, you go to rescue him, and then it's all like, hey, your brother's here, it's fine.
Yeah.
So you go and see him, and then did you just sit there and talk to him during that part?
Yeah, I think
about his dreams.
Yes, yeah, I think I did.
So
because there's worth pointing out. This very late on. There's branching dialogue to a degree, isn't there? In the game, there's actually quite a You don't lose the opportunity to ask anything, but it's your choice whether you want to delve deeper or not. And I went and had a good chat with him. If there's anything that didn't work very well for me, it was their relationship, because she hadn't seen him in so long. They both had different agendas. Obviously, she's been
very much.
Got to look for him. He's something completely different, and I don't think the relationship played out very well there. So it wasn't as involved, and maybe that's why the ending was a little bit anticlimactic.
Yeah, exactly. So you read all the documents and the story that plays out between them, you do get the impression that they are people who have clearly been forced apart, and they're not here for any kind of, loving reunion. Well, I suspect Jessie would have appreciated that at a point, but she comes to realise that's probably not. Yeah,
but this is one thing that I wondered about. So Jessie's brother has been taken when they were kids after this AWE in their hometown in the dump. And she's been on the run since that point, hiding and trying to find him. And it's taken all this time. He was taken as a replacement director, because he had the potential. So that's what they were doing. And then they were training them to be directors. They had another one who was failed. From the ones that you see, I presume there are more. And then they had one that they constantly refer to as not being able to capture. And that's Jessie.
Yeah.
As the alternate director. And when you kind of get through that story arc and it's there before you hit the end of the game, you do begin to think that actually her being there to rescue her brother is not her free will to be there and rescue her brother. Her entire life has been her training to be the director that she becomes. Yeah. And she has been guided into that.
And actually, it almost feels... It's interesting you say that, because it almost feels like the brother is just the carrot dangling on the stick.
It's ultimately, once you have hit the ability level or skill level or knowledge level required, when you can find this building on your own, you are ready to be the director. And that kind of feels what it is. And she's brought there at the right time to be in the right place and serve that role.
Yeah, and there's an interesting document that kind of tracks her movement across the country, actually. So you realise that she's been watched the whole time, and they knew exactly that she was coming, and yeah. But you're right, it was anticlimactic. You get to the end of the game, and you go through an entire section at the end where you're killing waves of enemies, and you get this,
it's a proper build.
Director level power, charge. Yeah. Where all the animals are like all the enemies are like level 35 or level 36, and you're just
they're about 10 times higher than you've been dealing with the entire game,
smashing them apart, absolutely. And you fight your way to your brother, who is there, kind of controlling the hiss at this point, and you think, "This is it. Here we go," and then the game ends.
Yeah, it does. Credits roll. That's it.
And the quote of the day: "What the f?"
It just there's no final confrontation. Did you hug him? Is that it? Do you hug him? You touch him?
You try and
trim.
You try and cleanse him, don't you? That was it. You
that's
try
it. You
and cleanse him,
yeah. And it's done.
Cleanse his aura. But yeah, and then the game just ends, and you're like, wait, hold on. Are they doing the fake ending, fake out twice?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Oh no, they mean it this time. Okay.
That's it. We're done. And you're like, yeah, you're just back. Oh, now you can go and explore and do all those side missions you missed. And it chucks a couple of extra missions in after the end game, but that's it. And you're just a bit, oh, I wanted more. I did. I wanted more. I wanted a lot more.
Yeah. It didn't, don't get me wrong, it didn't feel short. At no point, and that's probably because I've spent so much time reading bloody documents. It didn't feel short by any means, but it just felt like you said the ending was just really anticlimactic, because I was expecting and dreading. I was dreading a big boss fight with him. And then you're just like, cleanses or he's fine. Well, he's not. He's in a coma. But yeah, that was it. So that was a bit of a shock. I won't even say it was disappointing. It was just weird.
Yes. Yeah, it was. And then that's it. You're left thinking about the story and, quite frankly, just wanting to explore more of what you've not seen. Find out more about the building, do that director's job, because they're still invaded by the hiss. You've still got all that stuff to do. And face it, any workplace that has safety shelters for 6 occupants at a time in virtually every department, that's got to be a place to go and find out what's going on. It's also a warning sign: never, ever work in a place that has emergency shelters in almost every department.
So if you've not seen the game, it's basically like a giant steel door which opens very, very slowly when you press the button.
It's about 3 feet thick, isn't it? And
essentially it's just like a small safe room inside. And every time I pressed the button to open one, I thought, there's going to be something in this one, isn't there? There's going to be some kind of hideous monster inside this one. And it never happened.
Which was quite lucky.
But even now, every time I open, even if I've been in it before, there's still part of me that thinks they're going to have done it in one, right? Just to really with people. So
no. It's such, I think, at times a hard game to describe, and which is why, knocking on to about 50 minutes, we are still trying to figure out ways to describe it. Because it is a third-person shooter. It's an adventure game. It's a paranormal story. It's a sci-fi story. But it's unlike really anything else.
It's also a mystery. It's also about family. It's
like the X-Files meets Fringe and a bit of Max Payne.
That's a lovely description, actually. Yeah, it's all the best bits of the X-Files and Quantum Break.
I mean, we mentioned earlier about watching videos. I love the fact that they've took their learnings of the live action stuff from Quantum Break, which people weren't overly enamored with a lot of the time, but have implemented them seamlessly into this. There's no video loading. There's no cutout to watch one. They're just playing on screens in front of you in real time and have a beautifully screwed up vibe to some of them. What's the Freaky Kids show?
The Threshold Kids.
Oh, the Threshold Kids. That's like Terrorhawks meets Nightmare on Elm Street. It is frightening.
It's horrific. It really is awful. Did you find the document that explains why it was made as well?
I might not have done because I can't remember. I can't think of a reason.
I think I'd seen 1 or 2 episodes by this point, and I was like, "This is awful. Why does this exist? What is this? What is this thing?" And it basically, it turns out there's a document somewhere that describes the fact that essentially they've taken Dylan, and it doesn't mention Dylan, but you piece it together from, essentially they've come into the possession of a child at some point after some AWE, and they need to educate him somehow. And hey, puppet shows are a great way of educating kids.
And these are not child-friendly puppets.
This is it, essentially, yeah. The Threshold Kids thing was basically designed to teach this poor boy who's been taken against his will and held in this government facility, teach him about the dangers of altered world events and objects of power and stuff. And you think, oh my god, this is like Sesame Street if we were on the ship from Event Horizon.
Yes, that's exactly it.
So yeah, so I'm still having nightmares about Threshold Kids.
It's the fact it's got brilliant touches like that are so horrible and just plain evil but well intentioned that it just makes it. It does. It's fantastic. It's fantastic, and without doubt, I actually haven't done it yet, but now we have the timescale for the extra content. I'm in for the season pass because I just want to do. Yeah. I just want to explore more. I just want to experience more of this absolutely crazy world.
Do you know Nick Case? I'll give him a quick shout out from Laps Gamer. We were talking about this on Messenger, and one of the things he said, which was actually a genius idea. He said I would just love all of the documents in a book that I could flick through at my leisure.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, yes. Actually, yeah, that would work really well.
Yeah, I'd buy that.
Yeah, if you're listening,
I'd buy 2 copies. You would definitely be getting one for Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Control, absolutely fair to say it is not the highly polished cover shooter that you think it is. It's not a cover shooter.
It just doesn't. Not. No, it's not. It's not. Yeah. Cover.
There is a lot of combat, but actually, I think that is there just. I hate to say it, I think that is there just for padding a lot of the time. And really to make you feel like you're working to something, because actually this game is about the story and discovery.
This is the way I feel about it. A lot of video games use collectibles and documents as a way to kind of fill portions between, the combat sections. So Uncharted is a pretty good example of that, right? This one uses combat sections as a kind of way to fill out between going and finding the next lot of documents for me.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's a great game. It's got a lot of good content afterwards as well. Some of the more difficult content is actually after the end of the game. When you're fully leveled up, it does become even more of a challenge. But it has a whole host of surprises and puzzles, and it's just really, really well done. I loved it. I loved it from start to finish, and I whipped through it probably faster than any other game this year. For the length of game, I've completed games faster than that, but they've been shorter games. So this one, I've just wanted to go back and play more and more.
Yeah, same here.
And it's well worth it. And we're doing a podcast on it, so it must be.
But it's the only thing that's kept me up until like 2:00 in the morning. Anytime recently, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, excellent. So if we haven't completely ruined it for you, or we have completely ruined it, and actually you still fancy going and playing it, then go and buy it, play it, enjoy it. If you disagree with anything we've said, let us know. If you agree with anything we've said, let us know. If you disagree, we'll just send the Federal Bureau of Control after you. Lock you in the Panopticon.
Make you watch the Threshold Kids. with the fridge. Yeah, great. Okay, yeah, we've listened to your feedback, and we just like you to sit there and watch that fridge. Thanks.
Yes. Oh, no, superb. Thanks very much for listening to our ramblings for the last...
Thanks for indulging us, because
an hour.
It was very indulgent of us, but do you know what? It was great. I love that game and I could talk about it for longer.
And we will be back with the Codec Momentum update for September. That'll be our next podcast. So we will have Ali back with us then, and we'll run through what's happened, where everybody's on the leaderboard, and maybe announce if we decided to do anything special for October.
Oh, there's a nice idea. Well, I'm doing something special for October, but I'm not sure anybody else wants to help with that.
I don't think you can have momentum points for that one. I think your wife can.
Oh, come on.
I think, if Lucy gives birth in less than 12 hours, I will give her 500 bonus points.
If it takes longer than that, I think arguably she deserves more.
What, like an extra 100 points for every hour?
I think Rose took something like 36, so let's not go there.
Oh, yes. So, so we'll be back with the Momentum update. And speak to you all soon. Head over to codecmoments.com if you actually want to read the control review or have a look at anything else that's on the site. Hit me up at Codec Moments on Twitter, or get in touch with Andy at Clinical Andy on Twitter. And we'll be talking to you again soon.
Definitely will.
Bye.
Bye.